Are you afraid of heights? Well, you are 3 kilometers high on the top of a frozen mountain, hiding. It's been hours since you were ordered to guard it. You were drafted to defend the borders of your nation, where your home is. Your enemy is in another summit, not too far away, and he knows where you are. One single mistake, and you're done. You quickly aim, shoot and hide, as a shot hits the ice next to you. That was close, and you don't even know if you missed. But you can let them defeat you. No one is passing from here. The hunger, the cold and the pressure are beating you up. And you just want to go home at this point. To see that girl that you like. To play with your friends again. Who could blame you? After all, you're just 19. But you won't finish your guard today, or the next one. On an Alpine holiday, a tourist will find you. Rifle still strapped on, still on guard duty, over 100 years later. But at least, someone knows your name. Heya, this is Jan, and this is the story of those who fought in the Alpine front of World War I. We just went to the sunny Venetian plains on the last video, but you will probably need a coat this time, because we're going to a mountain range that can be -0 all year round. In the first years of the 20th century, Italy was in a process of redeeming ethnically Italian territories from other nations, and seeing how their former ally, Vienna, wasn't doing very well in the Great War, they saw the conquering of the Italian lands that were under Austrian rule as their fourth and last war of independence. Right after Italy declared war on Austro-Hungary in May of 1915, the southwestern front of World War I was opened, Il Fronte Italiano, but 75% of it was mountainous terrain. 450 kilometers were in the Alps. The Italian general Cadorna promised a Napoleonic-style victory in just a few weeks by storming into the Austrian borders in no time. The 1st and 4th armies of Italy were drafted to the highest areas of the Alps, over 2 kilometers high on average, to fight the Austrian forces up there. And you might be thinking, that would have been a war with nothing more than rifles and machine guns, because there's no way they're getting artillery all of the way up there, except they did. Cadorna ordered them to get artillery pieces up there to the border, and considering the bad quality of the roads and vehicles, the journey was like way longer than it was meant to be, and the lack of resources was obvious. Less than 70% of the infantry had access to a rifle, and the army had the whopping amount of 0 grenades at their disposal. None. They couldn't produce a single grenade due to cost, and machine guns were also very unusual. Actually, the submachine guns that they had, the Fiat Villarperosas, were actually from aeroplanes, repurposed for infantry, hence why it looks ridiculous, and aiming with it is nearly impossible. And yeah, it is the same Italian Fiat that makes the cars. And so, the quick military victory that Cadorna promised had vanished, making a fair amount of the troops hate their general more than they hated the enemy before the fighting had even started. And if you know anything about war, you know that is not promising. And then it was a whole month late. Wait a second. It was a whole month later that they were able to get to the borders. And in the meantime, the Italians didn't have much forces up there. So the Austrians will outnumber them, you may think. But they didn't. Their defenses were even lower. They were so low, in fact, that many Hungarian troops were ordered to continuously travel up and back down from the mountain range, to give the enemy spies the idea that they had way more reinforcements than they actually did. But at the end of June of 1915, both sides were heavily reinforced. The Italian army brought the elite units who will become legends up there, the Alpini. Troops whose story traces back to the foundation of the Italian kingdom itself. In 1872, when Italy was merely 11 years old, generals believed that there was no way of having military operations in the Alpine borders, leaving them weakly defended in the event of an invasion, until Captain Giuseppe Peruccetti proposed that a defense unit should be recruited locally from the very hills and mountains that they would protect, because they will be familiar and fit for the environment and will have the motivation of defending the place they call home. And so, the first mountain elite unit in history was officially created, engaging in constant high quality training and developing war tactics, moving faster than normal due to the lighter equipment, wearing the peculiar raven feathers on top of the hats Cappello Alpino, and having green flames as their badges. Each one of the battalions was named after the area that they would protect. They were drafted to war in Africa and during the Italo-Turkish War before the Great War. And in the Alpine front, they developed climbing and skiing units to move better in the area. And it was there that they encountered their Germanic counterparts, the Austrian Kaiserjäger and the German Alpenkorps. The Jägers were like the Alpini, but recruited from Austrian mountainous regions and specialized in marksmanship. They had better armaments and more resources than the rivals, and were just as fierce. I mean, their name literally means the Emperor's Hunters. If that isn't a terrifying name, I don't know what is. And the Alpenkorps were a newly formed unit that stuck to defense operations, since Germany was actually not officially at war with Italy yet. As a matter of fact, it will not be until almost a year later. As a sign of fraternity, the Austrians gave the Alpenkorps the same Edelweiss badge that the Austrian mountain troops wore, as gratefulness for their support in time of need. Many have heard about the violent conditions of the Western Front, being referred to as a hell on earth. But this was a different kind of hell, a worse one, the very last circle of it, permanently frozen. The aim of both sides was to control terrain that gave them advantage. Whoever controlled the highest mountaintops had the best view and was harder to hit. A single squad, or sometimes a singular elite soldier, was able to defend a summit from enemy advance. But the higher they went, the colder, windier, and higher in pressure it would get. I mean, it was common to have your eardrums damaged, since the pressure makes this banger play 24/7. Thousands died due to trips and falls in an environment where a mistake can cost you your life. The Alpine units proved their value, since they amounted great results to their respective sides, being accurate, brutal and proficient like no one else. The motto of the Italian Alpini was, "From here, no one passes." The most intense fighting were the attempts at conquering Col di Lana, which provoked constant battles across 2 years, taking so many lives that it was renamed Col di Sangue, Blood Mountain. Artillery was harsher than normal due to the pressure, and the fact that the ice and rock acted as additional shrapnel. It was a battlefield that had the most head injuries due to small fragments. And the other advantageous terrain was under the ground. To engineer means to cause something with skill, and that is exactly what the engineers and miners of both sides did. Not only did they build numberless defenses and trenches, cable cars, climbing routes, and kilometers of barbed wire, but also drilled multiple mountains, building barracks on stone and ice, the latter being basically alpine igloos, which allow for a temperature of about 0 degrees in an area where -40 was common. The one in the highest peak of the Dolomites, Mount Marmolada, being so vast that it was referred to as the City of Ice, and drilling into enemy territory, sometimes silently, filling them with explosives and blowing up whatever was on top of it. Like April of 1916 in Col di Sangue, where Italian explosives took out many Austrian troops. Many lives were lost due to artificial avalanches, like the 13th of December of 1916, White Friday, when one of the peaks of Mount Marmolada was detonated, burying barracks of the Austrian units, Sr Succon, taking out 300 men and causing a series of avalanches that affected both sides for hours. 10,000 lives were lost as a consequence, becoming the second worst avalanche-related disaster in history. These men defended what would be their home for over 3 whole years, many of them suffering permanent damage, not only physically but also mentally. The great Austrian professional guide, Sepp Innerkofler, who lived locally, had to fight the same men he had waved and smiled at, and had shared a beer or two with in the past. Upon seeing the bodies of their enemies, plenty of soldiers didn't feel victorious, only saddened. The Alpine men brought their superstitious beliefs with them, and they shared tales with the other troops about phantoms, vampires, goblins, and all that. And they protected and rescued their brothers, who get stranded in the harshness of a terrain they weren't familiar with. And they found warmth in their religion, only having a break from their duties to pray together, giving them strength to keep going. Since summer of 1916, as the casualties reached the hundreds of thousands, both armies grew to hate the incompetence of their generals even more. In desperation, the leading of the Austrian army was given to Germany in 1916, and in December of 1917, Cadorna was replaced by General Armando Diaz. In January of 1918, Austrian engineers were ordered to climb Mount Ortler for 6 hours, 3,900 meters high, and to build the highest range on Earth until 1990, where the atmosphere is 50% as dense as normal, pressure is hostile, and both vision and audition get blurred. And in October of that year, Alpini units managed to conquer the summit after intense fighting, dealing a great blow to Austria. The Alpini were immortalized in music and literature as the legends of the war in snow and ice. Many Alpini veterans were integrated into the Arditi, carrying their experience with them. The Alpen Corps continued to fight on other fronts of the Great War, carrying the Edelweiss badges with them, earning their fame as some of the most effective German troops in the Great War. They were joined by famous Erwin Rommel in fall of 1918 in the successful Battle of Caporetto, and the Kaiserjäger were disbanded together with the falling of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Both Germanic units transcended into the modern-day Gebirgsjäger and still wear the Edelweiss badges in honor of the fallen. In all of World War I, Austria had 1.5 million casualties, including killed, significantly wounded, and missing. Italy had 2 million, 100,000 of them being from the Alpini, and their unit was never disbanded. To this day, the defenders of the Italian Alps are the Alpini, and the National Alpini Association still does events in which veterans and their families can meet and share tales and stories, just like they did in the past. The trenches and barracks remain in the Dolomites to this day, together with a part of the kilometers of barbed wire. The climbing routes and the military roads were repurposed for leisure hiking. Remember the artillery that was lifted all of the way up there? Well, no one's taking it down, it's still up there. And of course, there are multiple works of cinema and literature about Alpine units, like the books The Sergeant in the Snow, the movie Kaiserjäger from 1956, the TV show Mino about the Alpini. The 3 of the units appear in the 2014 movie The Silent Mountain, which is a Romeo and Juliet style take on the Italian front. And there are also 2 movies from the World War II era, the kids movie Piccolo Alpino and Men of the Mountain. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is a Warhammer 40k regiment inspired by the men who fought in the Roof of the World. the Deprian mountain men, whose planet is an endless alpine region, although they definitely look more like the Alpini. In the game Isonzo, the 3 units are accurately depicted as the mountaineer class of each nation. And yeah, they move fast. And the Swedish band Sabaton made a song in the honor of the Alpine front, Soldier of Heaven, which I think is a fitting name. For if someone were to defend heaven, they will be as resilient and proficient as those who fought right underneath it. And from the multiple traditional songs about the Alpini, like the Alpini anthem, Inno degli Alpini, or the saddening songs Monte Nero, Tapum, and Sul Ponte di Perati, my favorite is Sul Capello.
Cappello sul cappello.